Thanks everyone for being here. We're so grateful that you have all decided to be here at Media City with us today on this gorgeous evening when you could have been elsewhere enjoying the sunshine and getting some vitamin D. For anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Sunita Bharti. I'm Head of Regions for Channel 4 News, but I am also one of the Deputy Chairs for Women in Journalism. Thank you so much to Lucy West and the Granada team for hosting us here today. We're really grateful. We've been trying to hold more of these events outside of London and in the north, because we know that there are lots of us working up here. So if you've got ideas for events that you'd like us to consider, or even places that would welcome us, please grab me afterwards, because I would love to hear your ideas. And that is one of the reasons why we're here, because Lucy and Judy grabbed us after an event in Leeds and said, oh, come over to Media City, we'll look after you. So thank you very much for doing that. We are here today to talk about career confidence. When we were coming up with a theme for this evening, we decided that confidence was something that we were all talking about, and it's something that we're all really passionate about. I think confidence is something that's really easy to spot in other people and not necessarily something that you can always see in yourself. So hopefully our discussion tonight will help you to reflect on your own career confidence, and we'll have some top tips for you. And obviously an opportunity to ask our brilliant panellists some questions at the end. Our panel this evening is a great one. We've got Tasha Ketchery from Granada, who is with us today. Granada Reports, sorry. I know Tasha, I've worked with Tasha. I'm so proud of the journey that she has taken to be here at Granada. I do a cheer whenever I see Tasha on my telly. So it's great to have you here. Next to Tasha is Linda Boyo. She is Head of Emerging Content at the Daily Mirror. I've met Linda doing a master's course this year, and she has been my saviour. So she's got lots of interesting thoughts for you this evening. And Annabelle Tiffin, political editor for North West Tonight, among many other jobs that you have had at the BBC, which you will be able to tell us as the evening progresses. So we will get started. I think just for people in the room that might not know you guys, if you can just talk us through sort of how you've got to your current position, I think that'd be really helpful to hear. So if you want to go first, Tasha.
Okay, so I started at the BBC on an apprenticeship when I was 16 years old. Worked there for 18 months and decided that I wanted to be a journalist. I worked on loads of different programmes, Panorama, also Channel M, if anyone knew about Channel M back then, Radio Manchester, so on and so forth. And then I decided that it was the economic crash and everyone was losing their jobs. And I was like, I think I'm going to have to go to uni because, like, whatever. So I called Leeds University randomly. I was like, I don't have any A-levels, but can you take me? I want to be a journalist. And they said yes, which was amazing. So I went to Leeds University. Kate right there was my tutor. She was an amazing tutor, and I wouldn't be here without her. And then worked all the way through that at the BBC because I'd already gotten contacts. Then came back and worked on 5 Live, BBC 3, ended up at Newsround for about 7 years, worked my way up through producing, directing, and then reporting at Newsround. And then during the pandemic, I applied for the job at Granada Reports, and I've been here ever since. So that's my story.
Linda?
That's super impressive. Hi, everybody. This is just so nice to have everybody together like this. So I came through the university route, went from college and straight to uni, knowing I wanted to work in the media. I thought, right, I'm going to do a degree in journalism. And at the time, this is going back over 20 years, showing my age there, it was very much print focused. You know, online, as it was called, was a separate module, and it just wasn't really even thought about. And I went into it very much with a different perspective. I wasn't particularly interested in hard news or sport, but the course was very much about that. And I didn't really feel like I fitted in. So I left feeling very deflated, feeling like I don't have a place in this industry unless I move to London, and didn't really know what I was doing. And then I spotted a job advert years later for a local independent publication in Manchester called Manchester Confidential. And despite having a degree, the job was for an office assistant. And I just thought, maybe if I just do that, this seems like a company who are thinking a bit how I'm thinking. You know, I'm on things like MySpace, if anyone remembers that, MSN Messenger, all of this. And they seem to be a bit more on that same page. So long story short, I got in there, I made the brews, I mopped the floor, and in the background, I just wrote every chance I got to write and kept proving to them that, you know, I had something to offer. Basically worked my way up in that company, was there for 7 years. We launched a Liverpool edition and a Leeds one as well. And then just after that, a brilliant time passed. I just felt like I needed something bigger, felt like I needed a sort of like a bigger vision and somewhere where I could grow and meet more people. So I applied for a job as head of What's On for what is now Reach PLC, but it was Trinity Mirror back there then, working for the regional titles. So Manchester Evening News, Liverpool Echo, lots and lots more. And then from there, I've stayed within that same umbrella company and progressed through to now working on a national, which is the Mirror. And my role is completely different now. It's very much at its heart about diversity and how we can improve there, because that's something that I'm just deeply passionate about. So that's...
Okay, hello everybody. Sorry, we started a bit late because I was late, so apologies for that. This could take a while because I've got a lot more years on you guys. So we could go back a long time, but I will skip through it very quickly. I didn't do the university route. I went straight onto a local newspaper in Stockport. And in fact, that was a job I did not think I could get. I was working for a very small independent newspaper called Area News in Moss Side. Nobody will remember that. It was right in the middle of Moss Side precinct, so it was quite right at the time of Gunchester. Again, if any of you remember Gunchester, the lovely name we gave Manchester in those days. And so it was quite an interesting time. And then there was a job going for an apprentice at Stockport Express, so I went for it. Didn't think I'd get it, but I did. So that started me on the process of being a journalist, which is what I'd always wanted to do. But I wanted to be on telly. And my dad said, you can't just be on telly, you've got to be a journalist. So, which I wholly agree with. So it really annoys me when people just say they want to be on telly. So I started on that, and then I got a job in independent radio, and then I went to a cable TV channel called Area News. Does anybody know Area News? It's a brilliant place. I don't think it exists. Actually, I think it maybe does exist. And it was owned by the Mirror newspaper, funnily enough, when Kelvin Mackenzie was in charge. So you can imagine what it was like. It had the news bunny. Yeah, who was behind the newsreader going like that if it was a happy story and like that if it was a sad story. And you had Tiffany's Big City Tips, and she read the business news while stripping. And you had the weather in Norwegian, and you had the bouncing weather, which was a man of smaller stature who used to bounce on a trampoline but could never reach the top of Scotland. So as you can imagine, very inappropriate. Janet Street Porter was also behind it, which you wouldn't imagine. Yeah, anyway, shocking. But from that, I got a good job at Central in the ITV. So that was where it also began. Although actually I have to say it was brilliant working at that cable TV channel. It gave you so much scope to do whatever you wanted. And then I was there a few years. I was a general reporter, but I'd started to present as well by that point. And then there was a job in the Media Guardian just saying for a presenter producer at the BBC in the Northwest. And I thought, somebody said, oh, go on, that'll be your perfect job. So, but I was heavily pregnant at this point, but I thought, do you know what, I'll just go for it. So I turned up for the job. I mean, I was quite small. So although I was about 7 months pregnant, I didn't have a huge bump, but I had a sort of an attaché case that I borrowed, and I just kept it in front of me the whole time, hoping that they wouldn't notice. And at the end, when they do that thing and they say, have you got anything else you want to say? And I said, well, you may have noticed I'm pregnant. And we'll get into all of this, I'm sure, but I mean, I don't know why I said it, but I just went, but I won't be pregnant forever. And anyway, thankfully, Tamsin O'Brien, who was the boss in those days, didn't care less about that, and they gave me the job. So they let me go on maternity, and then I came and I started at Northwest Tonight. And I have done, as you said, various things. So I've been the producer, presenter, not really reporting there, and then I got the job as the main presenter. And then something we probably won't go deeply into. I'm now political editor.
Yeah, and doing a great job.
Was it your predecessor? Yes. Your predecessor, Declan, wasn't it? The lovely Declan Wilson, then, changes things at BBC. And so now I'm political editor, but I do enjoy it very much. And I still do presenting as well. So that's a very, very...
I've definitely heard you in the car when I've been listening to 5 Live.
I've done a bit of 5 Live, yes. I don't know. Well, you kind of do, I suppose, as well, if you're political editor, you do get onto national radio bits. Yeah, they kind of like to use us in the regions. So, yeah, loads of stuff, really.
Can't follow that. So, why do you think that confidence is important? And if you were to rate your confidence at the start of your career and compare it to now, what would be your scores out of 10? Like, Tash, you're laughing, so you can go ahead.
We were having this discussion. I'm not a confident person. I think confidence is something that you gain over time. And I'm dyslexic and also an immigrant. And this is like, it's not English is not my first language. There's all these things. And I think because of that, there's a lot of barriers. Sometimes I don't feel like I belong. From my side, working class, all of that stuff plays a part when you're in a world that doesn't look like your world. So that's what I will say. But what I will also say is that confidence is something you work at. So for me, even though I wasn't confident, I've always led and moved despite fear. So everything that I've done, I felt like I had to do it because I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't have somebody saying, oh, well, if you fall here, we'll give you this. I had to move, and you move in spite of everything that's going against you. And I think confidence is all about resilience and the ability to keep going. And as you keep going, you realize, hang on, I can do this. I have done this. And that's where you kind of embrace yourself. Now at my age and where I am, I'm just truly learning how to be confident and kind of be authentically myself. And I think that just comes with time and age and experience.
So if you were to give it a figure today?
I'd say that I'm probably about 65% confident. Before, I was like 10%. My feedback used to be, Tasha is reluctant to speak. So...
That's not...
No.
And that's what she's here.
That's what I'm here.
Linda, same question.
Yeah, so when I started at the company that I'm with now, Reach PLC, this is over 10 years ago. I walked in, Sarah Lester's here from the Manchester Evening News, editor of the Manchester Evening News, and she'll remember I walked into that newsroom and I was just like, my face does not fit here, I mean, apart from the fact I was young, a woman of colour, a woman, it was a lot of men, middle class, middle-aged, and it was quite daunting. And I went in there actually feeling fairly confident because I knew what I was capable of. I'd come from somewhere that was very modern and forward-thinking, so I knew what could be. But yeah, I was taken aback when I walked in there and thought, gosh, there's a bit of work to do here. So I think with that, probably my confidence was lower at the start because I needed to find my voice in that newsroom and sort of find my feet. But then, because I've always trusted, as I said, in my own instincts and my own abilities and what I can bring, I just managed to navigate that. And now I'm in I'm in a position after all these years where I just feel like I just trust in myself, to be honest. And it doesn't mean, you know, if I say that actually I'm really confident, I'm 90% confident at work, it doesn't mean that I have all the answers to everything all the time. It just means that I trust in myself, and I have built up a really good support network across the company of people who believe in me and who I give back to as well. And that's really makes it enjoyable, if you know what I mean. So I would say I probably started out at like 50% confident. And then, yeah, now I do feel confident. But, you know, as we'll come on to, there's highs and lows.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
waves.
Absolutely.
I was going to say that because even though I've been doing this for a long time, there are still times when you don't have confidence in yourself. I mean, this is the time. It's not an example of me not having confidence, but today one of my colleagues said, "Oh, it was a really good piece you did last night," and I went, "Oh gosh, thanks," because often you don't hear that, so you sometimes think, "Oh, was it all right?" So you can doubt yourself. But I was going to say, I think when I was younger, I probably had the confidence of youth, and I just thought, "Oh God, of course I can do this," and I just go into somewhere feeling very confident and maybe a little cocky. But then I think. Time, especially in this industry, it can beat it out of you a little bit. And when I started at Central, a bit like you were saying, and I walked in and it was a very different atmosphere. It was very serious. It was very intense. And I wasn't used to this, and I hadn't been to university. So I felt like, oh God, and everyone would be talking about which university they'd gone to and so on. And I immediately felt less confident because I hadn't been to university. But I also think when I had my first child, I was straight away put on miracle baby stories every day. And that then your confidence goes because you think, oh God, they don't actually think I'm a good journalist. They're just sending me on the easy stories, if you like, because I'm a woman. And I think when I gained my confidence again, it was when I got the job at the BBC, because I came here completely fresh. Nobody knew me, and I was doing a new job, which was producer presenter, and nobody had done it before at the BBC, but I'd done it at Central. So I had that confidence. So I would say the key to me getting confidence is experience, like you were saying, a bit about age and knowledge. And I just think if you have knowledge about what you're doing, then you'll have the confidence. And I do think that's very important, because I don't think you can just have confidence. I do think you have to have knowledge about what you're doing will give you that extra confidence.
One follows the other.
Yeah.
So, Tasha, when we were talking about this earlier in the week, you talked about a really pivotal moment for you that helped you to kind of reassess your skills and who you were and actually what you could do.
Yeah. So I remember the first time I thought about being a presenter, my mentor said to me, "Oh, you should be a presenter. You should be a reporter. You'd be great. Your face would be great." And I was like, okay. And I spent probably 10 years thinking, oh, I really, really, really want to be a reporter. And then I got to Newsround and tried everything, absolutely everything. And it just didn't work out. Like, I wasn't chosen. I'd applied for loads of jobs. I'd done everything that I possibly could, tried to get feedback, everything. And I felt like I wasn't making an impact. And I remember meeting Danny Savage and sitting and chatting with him. And I was like, I really want to be a reporter. I don't think I'm any good. You know, I'm not getting anywhere. And he just said to me, apply for jobs you think you'll never be able to get. Just apply for them and see what happens. And I was like, okay. So this job at Granada came along. I could do about 75% of what was there. And usually I'd be like, oh, I can do 75%. I can't do the rest. I probably won't apply. And I thought, Danny said, apply for jobs you think you'll never get. And I applied for the job thinking I'd never get it. And I got the job. And I absolutely love it. It's brilliant. And everything that I didn't know, I've learned. And I think that's the biggest thing as women. We will kind of beat ourselves down and think that we're not capable, whereas a man, you wouldn't even be able to do 50% on the list and they just go for it anyway. But us, we're like, oh yeah, like, let's wait. And actually, I've learned everything. You learn on the job, you mature and you change and you get better and, you know, all these things. But had he not said that to me, I would have never thought that way and I would have never done it. And yeah, here I am now.
Be more Danny Savage.
Be more Danny Savage.
Danny Savage. He'll be thrilled that we've said that. I've said that. I've said that. Inevitably, there are things that knock your confidence and will have knocked your confidence during your career. Linda, like, tell us about a time when you felt that your confidence was knocked, and what did you do about it?
Yeah, so the biggest confidence knockers for me has always been, I've got 3 children, and every time I have gone on mat leave, it's been really, I found it really challenging coming back to work and back to, you know, who I was before or what I'd left behind or whatever. And I think it's really important, and this is something that I reflect on now, to know that you probably won't go back to what it was before, and that's okay. And actually to think about any change. My example is having my children, but it could be anything, because life throws things at us. You know, work is just one part of life. And thinking about what positive things that change brings rather than the negative. So for me, it was very much in that example, especially when I had my first child, I went on mat leave feeling very unsure about what I was going into, you know, how am I going to look after this little person and whatever. I quite was enjoying my job and I'm not sure what I've done here. And then actually a year later, it was quite the opposite. I came back to work like, oh, I'm doing all right at looking after him. And now I don't know what I'm doing in my job, and everything's changed, but also nothing's changed. And I just don't know where I fit anymore. And so, yeah, I think I was given advice at the time from other people in the business that had been through similar. And that was to give myself time and be patient and don't try and think you can just dive back in. But as I said, it was more about, in hindsight, looking at the benefits that becoming a mother has brought to what I do. And it's given me a different perspective on things, which is ultimately the same perspective as a lot of our readers. So it's not a bad thing, it's just different. And yeah, it's moving with change rather than, like seeing it as a negative.
And the juggle is
Real.
real. Real. Annabelle, how do you manage the juggle and keep the confidence in the workplace?
Well, I'm fine now because one lives in Australia and the other one's so I don't have to worry about a juggle.
Send them away.
But no, yes, exactly. Age 3, send them to Australia. It works perfectly, I found. No, it was real struggle. And actually, that when I started at the BBC, and I said I was heavily pregnant, so obviously I had a tiny little person and I had a 3-year-old, and I was on the shift was late producer and presenter, so I was on 5 nights of lates with while I say that they were very good, they did want me to start very early, and they kept saying, can you start in September? And I was like, well, he's not actually due till the 31st of May, so I don't think I can. So I managed to get it back to November, but he was still quite little, and my daughter was only 3. So that was a real struggle, and I started a new job, and quite honestly, probably with massive postnatal depression, because I was exhausted as well. I was doing lates every night, and, you know, I've got a good husband who was putting them to bed. I mean, they're his kids, so of course, why shouldn't he? But, you know, we always do that, don't we? But he took on a lot, and I did the late shift. But it got to a point where I just thought, I can't actually do this anymore because it's too hard. And I was tired all the time, and I didn't integrate in the office because I was tired all the time and I was new. So I just used to keep to myself and Howard Booth. Used to keep me occupied. And it was horrible, actually. It was a really, really horrible time, and I didn't enjoy it one bit. And it was then I did somehow, I don't know how, got the courage up to say to Tamsin, my boss at the time, I'm going to have to leave or go part-time. And thankfully she said, it's okay, you can go part-time. But obviously that is a decision that we have to make as women, mostly, isn't it? Let's be honest. And I think that does knock your confidence, because then you come back, don't you? And I'm not here to slag off men at all. And I don't think that's what this is about, men v women at all. But obviously men don't have that. So it is very hard to build your confidence back up after you've been on maternity leave. And especially when you're new as well. That was really difficult. But yeah, the juggle is just, it is what it is, isn't it? It is, you somehow get through it. I don't quite know how.
And so did going part-time just totally shift your mindset?
Well, it just meant I was awake more, and I felt like I could do my job better. But of course, then it limits your career prospects, and financially it limits you as well, because suddenly I was only working 3 days a week, and even all these years later, that's still punishing me because of my pension and so on. So but this is, I suppose, a slightly different topic, isn't it? But I think it's all part and parcel of then you then come back and you realise that you're on quite a lot less money, perhaps, than you should be, and perhaps your male counterparts. That's maybe another question, is it? We could get into that.
Yeah. Maybe one for another day. But all things that contribute to your confidence and your feeling of place within your newsroom. So my next question is to all of you: is it harder to be confident in our industry now, given the challenges across the sector? And perhaps confidence and resilience go hand in hand. I mean, I'm sure we have all been party to restructures, reorganisations. Linda, we were talking earlier about some job cuts that had just happened.
It's nothing is certain really in this industry. And even the things that I think can be positive are still daunting, like AI. It's there, and how's that going to affect things? So I think you can't just sit and be complacent with it. You have to be adaptable. And that's the main thing that I think in terms of any uncertainty or period of change, is that you just have to be willing to adapt and be resilient, as you said, I would say.
I agree. I think you've got to be able to pivot. So like the best thing about Newsround, where I was at, was that we learned how to do absolutely everything. They fired the editors, fired the camera people. It was like, you're going to do this job now. But that has set me up to be able to do everything now. So I feel like if there's anything happening, I can always pivot. I think that's the biggest thing, because everything is changing constantly, and you just need to be able to go with the flow. So I would say any advice that I would give would be try to do like courses all the time, definitely get a mentor, make sure you're speaking with that person, make sure you know how the industry is going, and figure out where you can fit in and where your skills are best placed, because as you said before, nothing's certain, but you can find a place for yourself.
Also, even outside of work, like I do things outside of work that are not directly related to what I do, but definitely inform it and, give me another sense of purpose that I think is important, particularly when you've got uncertain times. So like I'm like a school governor and I do other things. So I think that's important as well, like balance.
Perspective helps.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said before, you're saying about having the skills and so on, and I think that goes back to what I was saying about having knowledge. Because if you equip yourself with as much as you can, so as many skills as you can, and know what you're talking about, you can go for any job. I think you can go for any job, but I think you have to. How do I say this? So yes, I think you can go for any job as long as I think you have a certain amount of knowledge and experience for that job. So, but arm yourself with that, because there's no reason that you can't arm yourself with as much as possible and then be able to go for any job that you want. And I just think a lot of that does come with experience. But it's interesting because from my perspective, I am probably nearer the end of my career than you are at the beginning. And so you could say that I might be resistant to change and arming myself with new skills, but actually I'm not really. And I think I even tried, you'd be impressed with this, Katie. I even tried a bit of mojoing yesterday. Oh, it was awful. And thankfully the cameraman turned up just in time to do it better for me.
You gave it a go.
But I gave it a go because the guy I was interviewing didn't have very long, but I had a mojo kit in the back of my car, and I thought, so I was ringing Kaylee at work, going, Kaylee, and I was FaceTiming her saying, so which lead goes in here? And she talked me through it, and I did it, and they weren't really positioned very well.
Hasn't worked at the BBC.
sorry.
It's mobile journalism
Mobile.
kit. Nobody knows
So,
what.
yeah, sorry. So it's just filming with your mobile camera, with your camera, your phone. Sorry, by the way. But you have to click it. You have to connect it to microphones, and so. But I was willing to give it a go. But we do our own editing, and we have to write online copy, which is fine because I was a print journalist. But for a lot of people, it is a new thing for them. But I think if you give it a go and you learn new things, then why isn't that's just going to give you confidence, isn't it? Yeah. But if you're not prepared to move on and you're not prepared to change, then you're going to feel
frustrated.
Yeah.
Then nobody needs that. We've actually put together some top tips, or what we think are our top tips for being confident, which should be appearing on the screen now. So these are hopefully really helpful. Always ask for a pay rise over and above what the company is offering. And if you're going into a new job, I'm Claire. I manage Claire. She's putting her hand up now. And if you move company, and you get offered a new salary, don't be afraid to ask for more. Have points. Be prepared about your level of confidence, skills, and everything that you've got to offer. I know that is something that I didn't, when I was negotiating for this position, because I kept saying, well, why are you asking? I was like, I only get to leave BBC News once, so I need to make it right. So value your worth. That is definitely one of my top tips. And the next point is Tasha's and Danny's. Never think you're not ready for a role if you're looking at a vacancy, and particularly if it's something that you'd like to do and you can bring something to the role. Don't get tied up in ticking every single element of the job description. You should be able to tick some of them, though.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. But certainly, as someone who has been on hiring panels, actually, you do see a real difference between the genders. Men are much more willing to put themselves forward for jobs than women. And I do think that going down the list and be like, I can do that, I can't do everything. Well, actually, it's for the hiring manager to decide whether you're right for the job or not.
Also, I was just discussing earlier with Emily, beyond the job spec itself, it's all of the other things that can put you off applying for a job. So, it says you've got to be in the office X amount of days, and actually it's better for my situation to work from home more, and all of these things. And I think, and it's advice I also need to give to myself, is all that stuff can be negotiated.
Absolutely.
So don't think that it is exactly what's written.
Yeah.
I think is important.
Yeah, really, really good point. Yeah, those things can be negotiated. And if you don't get the job, I say this to so many people, get proper feedback and really do ask for constructive feedback. The worst feedback I think you can ever receive is, oh, you were so close to me. That's not helpful. It's not helpful for anyone. And don't be afraid to report bad behaviour is the next point, especially if it's, against you, and you'll never know if other people are also doing that. So don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, get that noted down, because those sorts of things can really knock your confidence, no matter what stage you are in your career. The next one, keep your LinkedIn profile up to date, pat yourself on the back, shout about your brilliance, highlight your achievements, because other people will. Take pictures, put links on, make sure people are seeing what you are up to. And the next point on the next page, this is something that I suggest all the time, is have a folder in your inbox where you can just send yourself a little email and it's a record of your achievements, so that when it comes to those job applications, you don't need to rack your brain, you don't need to find the copy or the piece, because you've got it all logged there. Your future self will thank you. And it's quite good to look at when you're having a bad day as well. And, those days when you get when people thank you for your work, like that is also useful for that folder. So that is something that I always suggest. And you said this, Tasha, already, take every opportunity for a mentor. Women in journalism, we have a mentoring scheme. I'm sure lots of other workplaces do as well. So get a mentor. Like I've got one at the moment. I've always got one. If it's not a mentor, it's a coach. So I think that can be really valuable to you. And as well as shouting about your achievements, do reflect on when it's going well and not so well, because I do think that those taking the time to learn from what's gone wrong, those are the lessons that you probably learn more from. I know I've definitely learned more from failure than success, and it's how we grow and develop our confidence as well. And one of the reasons we're all here today, grow your own networks, know who your allies are across all levels, and don't be afraid to reach out to senior members of staff and talk to them, have a coffee with them, and not just inside your own newsroom. I think it's really important to get out there, meet people, and meet people in different parts of the industry. I found that really interesting this year. It's something that I've been trying to do, and embrace the difficult challenges and set yourself goals. And I know I always encourage people to think of the year in quarters, because I think weekly can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming. But actually, if you're like, in this quarter, I want to do this one good thing, so that by the end of the year, you should have 4 things that you've done for yourself that don't have to be stories, can be personal achievements, but just, it's just really good to focus in that way. Have you guys got anything else to add to that?
I was going to say, which I think it sort of is there, but not entirely. And what I would say is have the confidence to ask for help, because you really if you don't know something or you don't think you can do it, ask somebody that can help you, because people do like helping. They genuinely do. And even if you think, oh God, they're a bit important or whatever, I bet they'll love it, because people love talking about themselves and how good they are at their job, don't they? So if you ask somebody, they will help you. And the other thing I was going to say is not, I think we mentioned earlier, not everybody who you think is confident is confident. And that's important to remember. If you're not confident, don't feel crap about yourself, because we all have moments where we don't feel confident at all. And, even this is, I felt fine about coming here tonight, but I quite often get asked to do I don't mind hosting events, because I've got something to focus on. I've got awards and things like that. But if it's something where, will you come and talk about yourself? It makes me want to be sick. I can't bear the thought of having to do it. To just stand up and talk about myself and give like an after dinner thing, I will always somehow turn it down in some way, because I just don't like doing it and I don't feel confident enough to do it. I think, why would people be interested? So, I think people may look enormously confident, but it doesn't mean they are. And I don't think you should feel bad if you don't always feel confident, because it's not natural not to feel confident all the time. If you do, you're probably not a particularly lovely person, I would say.
Well, thank you for being here, Annabelle, in that case. Thank you for saying it. Well, thank you.
Every minute.
So I think for me, it's don't get bogged down with rejection. Like, there's so many people around. These jobs are like so hard to get. You will be rejected at some point, and you can't take that personally. So for me,
even though it feels really personal at the time,
oh my gosh,
that's important to remember.
It does. It feels really personal at the time. For me, sometimes I just thought, I'm just not good enough to be here, and it's about using that opportunity as an opportunity to learn, grow, and pivot, rather than thinking, oh my God, they hate me. Because even though one person will say no, another person might say yes. But if you stop at the one person that says no, then you'll never get to your yes. It's taken me ages for someone to be like, she's a reporter, this is brilliant. It's taken me ages. But I kept going until that person said yes. And had I stopped when everyone was like, no, it's not this time, then I wouldn't have gotten here, and I wouldn't have been able to tell the stories that I've been able to tell, and I wouldn't have been able to make the impact that I've been able to make. And me being in this position is really important. And I get told all the time when I'm out, oh my gosh, when I see you, you're a reflection of me. I'm so proud of you, literally by random strangers on the street. But had I stopped when somebody told me no, that wouldn't have happened. So just don't take things personally and just keep going.
To add to that, I would say, don't wait for someone to notice you or for someone to ask you to do something or come up with an idea. If you have ideas or things that you want to try out and, you can find a pathway to just do it, then just do it. An example of that, of my own, was when we went into the pandemic and everyone was obviously like, oh my gosh, what would we do now? And it was all hands on deck in terms of the news of what was happening with COVID. Again, using my own situation, my own perspective, and the fact that I'd come from not a hard news background, I sort of said to myself, I think we need to put something out there for all the people who are homeschooling all of a sudden, or, working at home with children around and whatever. And I just sort of proposed this idea of sending out a daily newsletter to connect with all the people that are in the same predicament as I am. And it just sort of went from there. And within that year, we managed to get 100,000 parents and carers tuning in to our newsletter daily to find out how we were getting through it. And that's just one example of, no one had asked for that, no one had thought of that, but I thought that it would be something different that we could put out there, and I didn't mind getting stuck in to do it. So it just showed something else that I could do, even though I'd not done anything like that with newsletters before. So yeah, I think.
So look for the opportunities.
Yeah.
Look for the opportunities. Right. Anybody in the room got questions for our panellists? Don't all sit here quietly. Oh, there we go.
I'm Mariana. I have a question for Tasha. So you mentioned obviously briefly that you're an immigrant as well, and so am I. And I'm basically the only person in my family who's ever went like a different route from like being a doctor or a lawyer. Everyone's very straight and not very creative in my family as well. It's always been what I wanted to do. When immigrating here and coming to uni, like we have a different sort of upbringing as well. So I never came into student accommodation. I'm not a big drinker and stuff like that. So that made my confidence very low in uni as well. And I remember in news days, for example, some people will say, "Oh, would you go there and like do a report?" Like, yeah, but I was like checking Google Maps, seeing where it was, because I've never been around here before. And also I feel like diversity is like something that is very talked about and it's really good. But when you're that diverse person in a room of people that seem very the same, it doesn't feel like diversity like is very much present there.
Yeah.
So how did you, basically it's a big thing, but how did you deal with feeling different, I guess?
Yeah, I think it was really hard because at the time as well, when I walked into the BBC, the black people that were there were the security guards and the cleaners, and there wasn't anyone like me in my team. It was when it was at Oxford Road, so that was years ago. And people would comment, so it's like, "Oh, you're from Mossad, why haven't you been shot yet?" People would say these things to me, and they would say, my feedback would be, "She's really intimidating because she doesn't speak." So I was quiet and I was quite, I internalized a lot. And then I realized that the reason why I'm here is because there's no one else like me. So you've got 50 other people with all the same ideas. Me, I've walked in from a completely different walk of life. I've got something that no one else has. And when you realize that there's a place for you and you can tell a story, and you're not just bringing yourself along, you're bringing along everybody else behind you. So the people who haven't come yet, the people who want to see you on screen, as I said before, people literally come up to me and say, it's little things like me having my natural afro hair out. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen a presenter with afro hair like yours out. I'm proud of it." So I think it's just about being authentically you. And I didn't realize that when I first started. Like I wanted to try and fit in. But the thing is, you never fit in because you're completely different. I don't drink. I like all these things. But it's just about owning who you are and doubling down on who you are because you're necessary. And sometimes it doesn't feel like you're necessary because you're in a world that is so different to the one that you were raised in. But actually, the world is different. And we're just here in this little circle of people who are the same. So outside of this, everyone's different and everyone is probably more like you. But inside here is completely different. So I would just say, just double down on who you are and you'll be brilliant.
I want to cheer.
You're
great answer. Go ahead.
It's a question for all three of you. I'm Lucy. I'm about to graduate from Salford Uni, just downstairs. And obviously I'm at the point now where there's not necessarily like jobs to apply for, and it's about getting experience and just getting what I can. And I found that my confidence is low because I don't necessarily feel like I have a right to have that experience and to sort of admire the people. Like, what would you say your advice is for just getting yourself out there and building that confidence, like in the start of your career?
Which bit? What sort of part of journalism do you want to get into? Broadcast, yeah. I mean, it is. We were saying about whether it's easier to be confident now or perhaps before, but I think I would personally, I mean, it's a lot. I would never have pushed myself and written to people and gone, oh, can I come in or anything like that. But having been in the industry for a long time, I would say it's horrible and it's hard to do it. And you feel sometimes like a bit of a fool, but you're not. And people genuinely don't mind. They like it. They like to be able to help people. It is hard, and I'm not saying it's not, because we get people all the time saying, can we just come in and work experience? And sadly, the answer nowadays is no. But that's the BBC. That's not us. I still sneak people in on a Sunday morning when I'm doing the politics show. I do, because I just think it's not fair. How else are you ever going to be able to even get a foot in the door if you have to fill out a great big form on the website? It's really hard. So today, might be worth just, you've got the editor of Granada here, but, I would just say, this is what I'm doing. Can I come in? Even if you're just shadowing for a morning, it's something you can put on your CV and it will help you a little bit. It is hard, but I would just say, just do it. Just get out there and just have a bit of nerve and just do it and bother people, and they'll either reply or they won't reply, but they won't mind. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say top tip on that, because I've used this in the past, is make sure you are watching or looking at the work that they're doing. Because if you can flatter someone in a video and say, oh, I saw that piece that you did,
Totally,
and I love
yeah.
that, or I've got an interest in that, you've made a connection.
Yeah.
And then, it just makes you stand out from the rest.
Yeah.
And we were all in your place to begin with. So actually people do want to help you because they see themselves in you, and we were all there. So we all needed help at some point.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just forget that. Because everyone's doing so well.
I'm the same, me and Lucy are graduating together in the same class.
And as well, because I know you're saying broadcast, so there'll be the obvious places that you really want to get into. But equally, if you're not getting replies and things and you're getting a bit frustrated, maybe widen your scope, because really every publication these days and media title, they want to incorporate broadcasting in some way. So at our place, we have a whole studio, not to the level, of TV, but we have it, and
Probably better.
And, we're equipped, and we're really trying to drive forward on video, and, we've got our YouTube channels and things. So it might not be in your head like the dream job and the end goal, but if you're doing what it is you love to do and what you want to get involved in, it's progress, isn't it?
Yeah. And the other side of it, we now have to do the print side of it. We have to do the online side of it. So actually being able to do both is really, really useful. And like I said, all those years ago, I said I wanted to be in telly, and my dad said, no, you need to be a journalist. So I went and worked on a newspaper because it gave me a real strong background. I know it's not as easy now, is it? Because I did an apprenticeship through, I don't know if they even do NCTJ things now, do they? Do they do those sort of apprenticeships, do they? All right, well, right. Okay. Well, that's what I did. But, you know, so I think you're absolutely right. It's multimedia now. It's not just one or the other, actually, to be honest. I think as well, just back to your point before about being different, I'm assuming you're under 35.
Yeah.
So that's your superpower at the moment. You know, all we talk about is under 35. So you can bring something to anywhere really that we're desperate for. We want more. We want to know what people your age want to watch, read, listen to. So be confident in that.
And yeah, don't be afraid to neither, like, because other people are, like, rest assured that other people are. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Just wanted some advice on that first point that was on the PowerPoint about asking for a pay rise. I feel like as an industry, we kind of all just think, oh, we're so lucky to have this job, we'll just take what we're given. And my friends in other industries are negotiating pay rises and they know their worth, like literally every year. My last position, I work at the BBC. When I moved up to Manchester, I somehow managed to negotiate a pay cut, and I look back now and I'm like, why on earth do I think that, like, oh, this is so, like, I'm so lucky to get this job that I'm going to take a 5% pay cut. I'm like appalled at myself. But the next time I go for another role, I will obviously not do that. I just wanted to see what advice you had in terms.
I did exactly the same thing. I was working at Central, and boss of IT at BBC rang me and offered me a job on a pay cut, but I was pregnant and desperate to be here because we lived in Manchester, not in Nottingham. So I did it, and I just accepted a pay cut to come here. And it was years before I could even get anything that was half decent. But I would say one boss said to me, a female boss, she said, I have a trail of men coming up to my desk constantly saying, I want a pay rise, I want a pay rise. Yeah. And she said, women never do. And they will do it. They will. And I won't go on about my pay thing because it's very boring. But, you know, we all know, don't we, that there was a whole, you know, equal pay thing going on. And I think for me to go for my equal pay claim, I needed the support of a lot of other women and their advice and their and one person who's no longer with us, very sadly, Diane Oxbury, she said to me, can you live without an extra £20,000 a year? And I went, I'd rather have it. And then she went, then why aren't you fighting for equal pay? So it took a long time, and hopefully you won't have to go through any of that kind of crap, because hopefully we've kind of smoothed that route for you, I hope anyway. Oh God, you're not going to say you're still going through it, are you?
Well, yeah.
Oh.
I've you know, it's a bit niche maybe, but about confidence, but I regularly act up in my role, and they know that. And I recently discovered I was on the floor of my pay band, and there's a big push in the BBC to get above the 33%, which I'm nowhere near. And I said to my boss, you know, can you please ask for a review? And, oh yeah, I can ask, but probably won't come because there's no money. But they repeatedly asked me to act up. And I feel quite aggrieved by that, because I continually do that, and I want to do that because I want to progress, and I want to show willing.
A small pot of money that they can give, that is a little pot that Raven has. I would like to run it.
Right. Because it's knowing who to.
Yeah, I would also say in big organisations, and you know the BBC is one of those, like, know what the procedures are in place. Like, there is a salary checker system, like you can get your pay reviewed, you should be asking to find out where you are in your cohort, you should be able to find out that information. And the key thing is to know what you're arguing about. It's not just I want more money, it's I want more money because this is the value that I bring to the business, and be really clear about what those things are.
But find out who your comparators are, who you're comparing your wage with. I think people need to be a bit generous, and just if people can be honest with you, if you can find a few people in the newsroom that you think might be on quite a lot more than you, if they can be honest, it might help you.
Or use Glassdoor.
Yeah.
It's not as well used in our industry. My partner uses it in his industry, and like a lot of other corporates use it and regularly put their salaries on there, and it is wild.
But it is really hard. It is really difficult to go and say, give me a pay rise. But but I do totally get that. But I think as you said, it's knowing your worth and being able to prove to them why you should have it. I mean, they may still come back and say no, and that's where you perhaps need to know whether other people are getting paid more. But it's really hard. It is. But show your confidence.
Yeah. But important to
It will totally. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
it's still what she'll say she can. Yeah, just doing it.
And they're not going to sack you for asking for a pay rise.
It's not ask anyway.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's not helped by the fact that you hear a lot of, oh, no one gets into journalism for the money, which is kind of true. But equally, you kind of look at certain people in certain positions and think, well, hang on a minute, they're not getting paid nothing. So, yeah, it's a tough one.
Go ahead.
So I come from a very working class background, and I'm wanting to get into like radio and broadcast. And sometimes I feel like I've sort of internalised, but I kind of need to change the way that I speak in order to be able to like kind of break into the industry. I know it's not necessarily true, but it's something that I've kind of internalised. And I just want to ask about opening it to everyone. Like, how do you overcome feeling like you need to change who you are in order to like get into the industry?
I think you should just. I don't really know how to answer it. It's weird. I think now that I'm getting feedback, that's the biggest kind of equalizer for me. So people like the fact that I sound like a mank on Granada Reports because it's the Northwest, and not many people actually sound like they're from the Northwest. And they like the fact that I am literally from Moss Side in the city centre, and I'm really proud of being from that. And I do sound posh because I'm not British. So I have a mixture of a very posh British accent mixed with the fact that I'm a working class girl from Moss Side. So it's up in the air. But people like that because we're not broadcasting to posh people. We're broadcasting to Tom and whoever down the road, and they don't want to hear a posh voice. They hear them all the time. They hear people from London all the time. They want to know that the next door neighbour is doing really well, and the person that they trust can give them the news. So I think you need to just know that you're breaking the mold, because it's not normal to hear voices like you on there, but it's also refreshing. And outside of this industry, people think it's refreshing. And now that we've got Twitter, you get instant feedback.
Yeah.
So you'll be absolutely fine.
And I would say in an era when like we're trying to get audiences to trust us, being authentically you and sounding the way that you do will help people to trust you. I love hearing a regional accent on everything. Like, it brings me so much joy. I love a really strong regional accent because it still stands out. It shouldn't do.
But I mean, you do have the perfect example here. If I can just throw over to my lovely friend Katie. I mean, yeah, I don't, God knows why you got the job, but I'm just saying.
I did start in radio, and I started in Radio City, which is in Liverpool, and I wasn't allowed on during work experience to even get my voice on a box with the Scouse accent. Like, I was told I had to lose it. So I spent like 3 years reading other people's scripts, like practicing how to get rid of it. So now I've got a really weird voice when I read the news because I am Scouse, but then you've just conditioned yourself to read it a certain way to fit that Scouse. It's just bonkers. But I don't think it's like that anymore. I think everybody just wants someone to be themselves. And
I mean, there are some accents that still wouldn't follow. Like where I'm originally from, you wouldn't put that accent on the telly.
Well, I think everything's changing, though. I do think people value more, just being yourself and being authentic and being a good journalist over what you sound like or what you.
Yeah, and if it depends where
Well, to me, I am a posh scouse.
You're not a posh scouse. Oh, but it's no. No. Where are you from?
I'm from Barnsley.
Yeah. So honestly, I think it is welcomed now. It genuinely is, and I'm sure Lucy would agree with that, wouldn't you?
I mean, we've got Lewis Dennison who does a lot of our online coverage, politics. He's from Middlesbrough. He's got a broad Middlesbrough accent, and actually he cuts through. Probably because, you know, so when he's interviewing Angela Rayner or Keir Starmer, you know, you actually take notice of it. And it's just, you know, it's him being him. I also think, you know, Jonathan Brown's just been appointed as one of our northern reporters, who again, you know, has got good kind of Yorkshire northern accent. And again, I think, you know, I think when you're reporting on events that are here in the north, I mean, I know as a viewer, when I watch something and something's happened in Gateshead or Newcastle, I feel I want to hear the accent because I know that's where the story's happened. I know that's where the reporter's from. It gives it that genuine kind of feel. And, you know, and I think it's certainly in regional news, one of our pluses is knowing our audience, knowing our place. A sense of place is so important. You know, so when something happens on the Isle of Man or up in Barrow, you know, you've got to understand from a newsroom here what the impact of that is going to be, and you want to hear those people genuinely reporting that live and care about, you know, where they're working.
And you only have to listen to Radio 2 at the moment, which I'm sure you don't, but it's full of people from Bolton with full-on Bolton accents. So honestly, I think really you shouldn't even think about that as a concern.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Susie. I've been in the industry for 12 years, and I feel like I've pigeonholed myself quite a lot in that time. Writing, I started out at like local newspapers, and I've been writing news online basically. And I am really trying to find a new job basically that involves new skills. And preferably, like, I'd really love to work in broadcast. And the feedback I'm getting time and time again with these interviews is like, oh, you know, you interviewed well, we really like you, but unfortunately, you know, we've picked a candidate with more experience, which is like part and parcel of just work, isn't it? But when it's time and time again, it is frustrating because, you know, as we all know, like, we're not going to get that experience without that job. And I kind of feel really stuck in a rut at the moment because I know that what I'm doing, what I've been doing most recently, I just don't really enjoy anymore. I don't get the same career satisfaction out of it anymore like I used to do. And I'm really ready for a change. And I just basically, my question is kind of to all three of you really, at like maybe different stages of your careers, like, you know, what would your advice be for someone like me who's just kind of feels like just a little bit stagnant at the moment and a bit frustrated? I mean, I know the job market anyway is just awful at the moment, but it is frustrating when you're kind of trying to like put yourself out there and apply, you know, like for these jobs that you don't think you're ever going to get. It is really frustrating.
Are there any opportunities where you currently are, like to develop your skills or?
Newer.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I was there and I left. Basically, I left quite recently, but as a sort of bit of a risk, really, because I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. If I'm being really brutally honest, and I knew that I was like, I wanted to do something different, and I know what I do enjoy doing, and I've been just been a lot applying for jobs, and it's just been savage. Like, it's so hard at the moment finding stuff. So yeah, I'm just really like trying to put myself out there, but I'm just desperate to sort of like pick apart your brains and ask like, what would you say to someone in my position, really?
Yeah, it's like upsetting to hear that, you know, you left because, I mean, I don't know, but I don't think I've met you before or anything like that, but
I just think because it's part of such a huge organisation, and again, this was a conversation I was having before, I find it frustrating that people don't feel like they can move around, that there's not like a bit of a pipeline even from the regional side of our business to the nationals necessarily. And it's definitely something that we need to work on, because I think in my mind it would be, there's loads of opportunities, you know, across the organisation if you wanted to try something different. So that's like, yeah, saddens me. But I would think about, I think you're doing one thing and then you've got your sights set on something pretty much completely different, and it's what you can do to bridge that gap to build the skills that you need. So if that's not, as you said, at reach, if you've left or whatever, and you're struggling to get through interviews at new places, then are there things in your sort of more in your own time that you could be looking at to try and upskill in some way? I don't know, like one example I have is I really wanted to just get involved with podcasting. It was something I'd never done before. You know, I've always just been online and print mainly. And so I basically started my own podcast. And I don't know whether that is seen as like, oh, something really, that I've achieved something great with that, but just going through the motions of how it works so that I feel confident enough to, if I wanted to apply for something in the podcast world, I could say, well, actually, I have put together a script for it, I've hosted it, I have edited it, you know, I've done every stage of it, and now I'm ready. So I don't know whether there's more of that approach you could take rather than skipping right to the end and then feeling very frustrated.
No, that is helpful, thank you.
Yeah. I was in your same position. So I was a producer director, an assistant producer at Newsround, making long form content and everyday news. Really wanted to be a reporter, but I couldn't bridge the gap. So they weren't letting me on screen or anything like that. I applied for jobs. Nothing was really happening. So at that point, what I started to do was basically double up on work. So on the days, I'll be doing my normal job. Then in the evenings, I'll be researching, getting my friend to film me making packages and then giving it to them. And I'm like, oh, I've done this package. Oh, it's really good. I'll put it out. So what I would say to you, just get a job, any job. Yeah. And then once you've gotten a job, make sure it's a job that you can do other things in the meantime. And then you need to bridge that gap by trying to upskill. So that might be doing work experience, or like when I first started, I was working at 5 Live on the phones, just answering phones to randomers that want to talk about whatever.
As we call them callers. I'll say it.
Until they
the audience.
Until they tried to kill themselves, it's a wild time. But when I started at Newsround, I was working at 5 Live as a phone op and answering phone calls at night while doing that in the day. And it's just getting to that place where you've got enough work experience and upskilling, but still being able to kind of provide for yourself. It's going to be really, really hard. You're going to be really tired, and it's going to be relentless. But that you need to be able to bridge that gap. You need to be able to say, I have done it, to be able to get that job.
So are you working at the moment, did you say?
Well, I'm doing like a bit of non-journalism related, but I want to stay in journalism. I recognise how quickly the industry's changing and the position that I was in, that I had, you know, like I left my job and I rehauled my CV completely, and I was like picking apart like my big achievements and putting them on there and stuff, and I've just realised like, well, I've actually got a lot of experience, like more than I realise now that I stand back and look at it all. But like, it's all in one field, and it's like there's no breadth there. And you know, it's really like it's one of those things that comes up in job interviews. You know, when they ask about like, have you done this or how would you tackle this? And it's really difficult, and you have to like prep your answers and stuff. But it's just that chain, isn't it? It's like well, like. Without the experience, it's really hard to get the job. So
yeah, but I think everything I can't really add a lot to it really, other than now in every broadcast, like we said before, there is also the scope to do online. And so therefore, a bit like you were saying, if you get in, perhaps doing the job, maybe it is carrying on doing the online stuff. It may not be what you want to do straight away, but you're there and your face will get known, and you volunteer yourself to do other things, and that could be a way in. So it may be that you can't get the immediate job that you want, because that is really difficult, isn't it? But if you're already really experienced in one field, use that, but then see if you can move your way.
And I would say, if you're getting job interviews, do ask for that feedback and ask for constructive feedback. And I know that it's really hard to get people to take the time to do it, but if you offer to meet people for a coffee, to do it face to face, you'll get more out of it that way, and it might force people to be a bit more honest with you about what you're lacking and what you might need to do, and people might have some suggestions.
That's the feedback. I mean, I had a job interview last week, and it was more of a sort of comms-based role within a charity, and I spent 3 days basically prepping and researching and basically creating this presentation for this job interview. And I did this job interview and I came out of it and I felt like I'd really applied all the feedback from previous job interviews, and I left it and I was like, do you know what, I literally gave that my all, and I was really impressed with how I performed in that interview. And they ran me back and they basically said oh, you did really well in the interview, we were really impressed with you and you really came across as really capable and everything and really confident, but unfortunately you don't have enough experience. And that just really,
which they would have known when you sent your CV, which is really frustrating.
With my CV out in front of them, and that just kind of felt like it. It's not a waste of time, obviously, but it is frustrating because it's I can't take anything from that experience because I gave it everything and it's positive feedback, but it's I can't control the fact that I don't, I can't.
Haven't done
experience that I don't have. So, it just kind of feels a little bit well, why did you invite me then?
But they obviously saw. I'm trying to look for the positives. They obviously saw something in your application.
Yeah, maybe. But I don't understand how they said, you couldn't have changed anything in the interview, but we still don't want you. I just don't understand. I don't know. Maybe I'm taking it too personally. I don't know. Because I don't take rejection personally, but
it's hard not to.
So especially if it keeps us within.
Coaching is a good thing.
Yeah.
You're really struggling.
I'm a careers coach as well. Honestly,
use that opportunity when they say to you, "We loved everything about you, but you haven't got the experience." Is actually use that. That's an opportunity. You go back to them and you say, "Is it possible to get experience with you? I've liked what you've seen. I really want to progress in this business. Can you help me?" And do what Annabelle said. Ask for help, because it's very hard to say no to people when you reach out to them and say, "Actually, I need your help here." Might just shift it.
Good luck, babe.
The only thing I was going to add, if it's broadcast you want to get into, obviously I take it you're probably on social media, so you can make your own reports. And work on your skills that way. And maybe send them to people to say what ask for feedback, or just put them out there. You don't necessarily need a company to air them, because anyone can see.
So when we put out apprenticeships,
scandal going on, and then
so we've judged, and I've been looking at apprentice applications for apprentices. If they've done something in their own time, that still counts when we're looking at it. So that very much is that. So.
Do we have any more questions? No. Okay. Thank you for being such a brilliant audience. There's wine and soft drinks over there. Please do take advantage, not just of the wine and soft drinks, but the networking opportunities. Please join Women in Journalism, and please let me know if you've got any ideas of other events that we can host in the future. But thank you so much for your time this evening. We're really grateful. And thank you to our panellists. Really great.